fellow Falcoholics and patrons, what is up? Welcome to our belated September Falcons Q&A session here at the Falcoholic Live. Always got to start things off with just a very sincere thank you to everyone who contributes on a monthly basis, all 25 of you now, which is just really crazy and incredible in just one season to get that sort of following, and we just really appreciate you guys. I know a lot of people are busy watching the Braves tonight, so it's going to be a quieter live show for those of you that are here, but we did get quite a few questions on Patreon, so we got a lot of stuff to talk about. Obviously, we have with us tonight the man himself at the Falcoholic. He is Dave Choate. Dave, how are you this evening?
I'm great. Glad to be here to share the good tidings of a Falcons win to come.
Oh, yeah. Love to have Dave here. Dave has been, our stalwart here on the Q&A session. It's the only way to get access to Dave me in private. So, that I think that's how we're selling these subscriptions, honestly, is that aspect of it. You can't get that anywhere else.
The phrasing is awkward, but if it's appealing, I'll take it.
Yep. We didn't make that up. That was you guys. So, you guys are responsible for that. And, that's just where we're at. So I know we have a live question from Solaire first, so we'll get to that one. So Solaire, with the question, he says, somewhat of a statement, but also a question. So if we lose to the Jets on Sunday, which, let's try not to entertain that possibility too much, but if we lose to the Jets on Sunday, I'm probably going to stick a fork into an outlet. Don't recommend that, but I could understand being tempted by this football team, especially because we have to get up at 6:30 a.m. So how do you guys cope with a big loss? Is there like a special thing that helps you? Honestly, the thing that's helped me a lot, and just being straight up, like talking about it on the post-game show, like immediately following the game and like venting that way actually does help me. So, there's definitely like tooting our own horn, but I actually do think the post-game shows help us sort of get over it a little bit, because we get the feelings out, and then it's obviously nice to have the community that we do here at the Falcoholic. I know a lot of people talk on the Discord. I know the staff definitely talks extensively on the staff Discord about this stuff, and it does help, but it's very frustrating. And it's just kind of one of those things that you have to deal with. But how do you, Dave, deal with that? And I also forgot to introduce Adnan, and I'm very sorry. Adnan, he is at Say Which Way. Adnan, how are you doing tonight?
I'm okay. I'm just in the middle of watching this Braves game. Very, very nervous right now, but the Braves are losing, so hopefully they turn it around.
I hope so too. I don't really follow it. The last time I watched the Braves, I was at a bar, and I saw a good play, and then the next play was when Ronald Acuna got hurt. Was like the second Braves play, and I was like, all right, I'm turning this off. Like, I can't be trusted to ever watch this team. So I apologize for that, sincerely to everyone. But yeah, Dave, I guess same question to you. How do you sort of deal with these like big embarrassing losses when they do come around?
Well, you think about the line in the first Avengers movie that Bruce Banner delivers. He's like, "That's my secret. I'm always angry." That's my secret. I'm always angry. I have not, over the course of coming up on 30 years of being a Falcons fan, gotten any better at handling a loss. So I'm always mad afterwards. Like, it's invariable. I usually, if you follow me closely on Twitter, at the end of the game, I do the thank you for watching thing, but I'm seething the whole time. And it's only later on that evening that I calmed down enough to write things down properly. So it pretty much always frustrates me. And I guess the way I get through it is as I stomp around a little bit, I yell, I get mad about it, and then I cool off. That's pretty much it. So I think you just have to let yourself be mad at this team because they deserve it.
Yeah. It totally true. I mean, yeah, definitely we're gonna, get Dave's take on this last game because we haven't had him on this week. But yeah, Adnan, do you have any special formula for dealing with these tough losses?
No, I just completely throw myself into my fantasy team for the rest of the
Yeah.
day after the Falcons lose.
Yes.
I only play one league ever, sometimes when we had the Falcoholic League, that would be like a second league. But yeah, it's especially really uh, effective when my fantasy team's doing really well because then I don't have to think about the Falcons.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that can be dicey because it depends on the outcome of the fantasy games, right? And
Yep.
generally, my fantasy teams have been good. So this year, that's been working quite well. But in some years past, uh, less of a positive. You got. I think it was like 2 years ago that I got blasted in fantasy in that, so that didn't really help me. But absolutely agree with Evan. If you're having, that could be another good way to do it. But yeah, I would just try to keep a healthy distance from this team if you can. That's obviously easier said than done, and something that I've sort of from like 2016, the height and getting like crushed, to 2017 also being really hyped, and then we've had now 3 straight years of like bad. So I guess that kind of takes some of the sting out of it because we've been beaten down by this team over the course of the last 3 seasons, just like bad football. And I guess it's like if they were to be competitive again and start actually like competing, then I think I would definitely get like way back in and like very hyped up. But yeah, at this point, I'm just kind of a little bit detached, but hopefully that will change because I think it's fun to be invested and to do this sort of stuff. And it's always better to come from a positive side. The coverage is more fun. It's more fun for us to write stuff. Like we don't want to sit here like criticizing the team all the time. Like nobody wants to do that. We want them to be good. So, yeah, it's rough, but we got to find ways to get through it. And I'm sure you guys, if you guys have your ways for I'm sure you have some funny ones. So yeah, you can throw those in the chat as well. Yeah, Ray Moon also joining us. What's up, Ray? He says, who's starting at corner? I see him in the slot, and that's honestly an open question. But Nandine, who do you think? Who do you think it's going to be on Sunday?
It could be me at this point, to be honest.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, I still have some time to get down to London.
Yeah, give us a call. Give us a call, guys. Yeah, I mean, I'll show up. Can't guarantee anything at all, but
yeah, but the corner depth, big issue, and it was an issue coming into the season, and it's been a depth in general has been a huge issue for the Falcons to the point where they really could not afford injuries like this, especially too many injuries at once. We're not a good enough football team or a deep enough football team to sustain that. Now you're talking about Avery Williams is going to be out. I don't think Kendall Sheffield was ever activated off IR, and he could be in the slot after the bye week if Williams isn't back. I think there's an outside chance that we could even see Richie Grant at the slot corner spot this week, just because it's become a war of attrition for the Falcons at this point, and I'm sure all things are on the table. And if Dean Pease refuses to play Grant at safety, then maybe he'll put him in there at slot corner.
yeah, honestly, that would not surprise me. If because we saw Grant get a lot of run there in the preseason at the slot, so that I think is totally something that's on the table there. Dave, do you have similar feelings about that, or do you think it will be someone else getting the start there?
I have a feeling they'll do something like with both Hall and Grant, they've really mothballed them to this point. Like Grant's played a lot on special teams. Hall, I think, has been active a few times and hasn't played a snap to this point that I know of on defense. I'd have to double check that. So I tend to think that they're doing that for a reason. And desperate times call for desperate measures. You got to play these guys eventually, but I would not be stunned if they did something like move Moreau into the slot where he played, quite a bit in Washington in recent years, I think, and kick TJ Green out wide and try to avoid starting the young guys if they can help it, and just have Hawkins hold down the other safety position. I don't think that's necessarily what I want. I certainly don't think, in his limited action last week that TJ Green gave us a lot of confidence.
God. And I want to like TJ Green. Yeah. It just
he did better, the week before. I thought, I didn't have a great game, but certainly considering he had to play the whole game. So maybe he's just better when he's got more time in there. But I have a feeling that we will see more of that combo than maybe we want or expect. And my hope is that we do get some Grant and Hall, because the sooner we get an idea of how good they are, the better, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Like that's why I want to see Richie Grant. I don't think he's going to make a living playing in the slot here, but I think it's something he'll be asked to do from time to time. And we're at the point with like we've lost 2 nickel like slot corners now for this game, so it's like you're not going to just have like a third slot guy. You might have a guy that's like, oh, he can dabble in the slot. But I think it pretty much needs to be Darren Hall or Richie Grant. I mean, Fabian Moreau did play a lot in the slot in Washington and was very bad. The only time he ever looked like a good corner was on the outside. We haven't seen as much of that in Atlanta as we'd like so far, but I think he's still better off as an outside corner. Yeah, Nico says Gina also offered to play wide receiver for the team, maybe on the podcast. So, I mean, they might need her. Like, if they want to fly us to London, I'll go out there and line up, and I can try to run a rub route on somebody. Maybe open things up.
Dave, what are our contracts looking like regarding actually playing for the team?
So basically, what it is if you can still type. After you play, you can get out there, but
you got to make sure we can't have a Russell Wilson situation.
Right. Otherwise, I'm cashing your life insurance policies. That's how that works.
Legal really didn't look too much into it, huh? It was just that one sentence.
Mm-hmm. No, Dave just had that info ready to go.
You have to remember our legal department is Matt, so.
That explains a lot. Yep.
Yeah, it does.
That does explain a lot. But it's going to be rough there at slot. I want to see Richie Grant, and I wouldn't mind Darren Hall either. But just one of those guys needs to play at this point. Like, they weren't like alarmingly bad in the preseason to where it's like, oh yeah, we have to keep them off the field under any circumstances. So my gut feeling is I agree with Odd on it. It'll probably be Richie Grant, but they'll probably rotate guys too. They clearly do that. But if they don't think like Grant's ready to play safety, maybe he's ready to play slot corner. I don't know. That's fine. If he can be a good slot corner, that's still pretty good 2nd round pick. So, any amount of return from Richie Grant, other than his special teams, where he's been a little up and down there too. But any play from him would be nice to get at this point.
They're going to fly Christopher Owens out there for him to play slot.
Hey, we might have to get desperate here. Who's currently in the UK right now? We might have to like hire someone from NFL Network or something.
Bring back Dominique Franks.
Yeah. Remember when we had Brian Poole here for a bit, and then we
just refused to bring him back for $2 million?
Yeah.
And then he became one of the best slot corners in the NFL.
And did he sign for the Saints for like vet min this year?
Oh, too? Yeah.
Yeah. He got cut by the Jets, I think, and then he just signed with the Saints for like nothing. And it's like, I don't know why you wouldn't just bring that man in for vet min. Like, I don't understand. But this team was clearly not willing to spend money on basically any veteran depth, which, I don't necessarily blame them considering what we've got right now. But, it was they were always sort of putting this team in the position where if you lose a couple guys, we're starting a bunch of rookies, which, I think that's by design. So we'll see. Jonathan Wiggins says with Ridley's status up in the air, he's out. He's 100% out of the game. But you might be talking about, future weeks. So hopefully he's not up in the air for future weeks. But with Ridley, not playing in this game, status in the air, possibly for the future, will we make a waiver claim on any free agent wide receivers? And the answer to that is not before this game, because they would have to have someone like already in London. They may have signed someone if it was like a normal game, but going to London, they weren't going to be able to do it. So it was really bad timing for them if they were sort of like kind of had John Brown on speed dial or something, and we're just hoping to like give him a call and have him show up. But they're not going to make a claim for this game. They may make a claim next week. So we'll see. But yeah, what do you guys think about that? Do you think that there will be another free agent addition next week if we're still sort of up in the air about whether Ridley will play or not?
I think if they haven't had one by now, they won't, because I'm sure Gage will be back after the bye. Next week is a very, very much needed week off for the Falcons. And I don't think it'll matter if they lose to the Jets because I think the season's over if they lose to the Jets. But, if they win and if they're at 2-3, then, next week during the bye, it's gonna be a much happier plane ride home,
Yeah.
and the team will definitely, have more hope and I'm sure more ambition coming out of the bye week, and they'll get some of those guys healthy, and they'll have some confidence coming out of it playing the Dolphins on the other side of the bye. But yeah, I definitely think what we got is what we've got with our wide receivers either way, and if they lose this week, then yeah, stick a fork
Play
in
the
'em.
young guys. Yep. Play the young guys if they lose this week. So, yeah, Dave, any takes on that? Any receivers you'd like to see him add?
I would still love to see John Brown.
Me
I
too.
was excited when they worked him out, and then of course it didn't happen. And it sure seems like it would be nice to have him right now, but I'm no NFL GM, so I guess I can't speak to that. But yeah, no, I would like to see them bring in somebody like Brown or just somebody that they could see, giving an audition to for the rest of the year and maybe bringing back next year, especially if, they're going to let Gage go, etc. So I think it's worth them bringing somebody in because I just don't think, like, as much as I like Frank Darby, as much as I like Zacchaeus, and as much as Christian Blake's, I don't know if that trio of guys are all going to be here and be counted on a year from now. And so I think it'd be good to take a look at what else is out there because, as much as this team wants to, I think Arthur Smith said it in an interview with D-Led, grow and develop these guys, which is really worthwhile. There just aren't enough players on this roster today that a year from now you're going to want to bring back, right? We kind of know that. So, and I think the receiver position, even though it's relatively young, is no exception to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think at this point you're sort of looking for some like diamond in the rough type guys like Trammell. I'm still very much team Trammell. But, he's basically a slot only guy. And I think that Trammell in particular makes a lot of sense for this team long term, like 2022. Because as Dave mentioned, they're going to have a decision to make with Russell Gage. And I hope Gage has a great season this year and gets a lot of money from some other team, because he deserves it, first of all. But second of all, obviously, it helps the Falcons with a nice comp pick, which I think is a key component of their strategy, with all these one-year deals that players are on right now.
Maybe we'll get some Josh Rosen the rest of the season. Who knows?
Oh, God.
If only.
That's a dark timeline to watch Josh.
We're more
Rosen.
likely to get Feleipe Franks than Josh
Feleipe
Rosen.
Taysom. Yeah, Feleipe Taysom.
Feleipe running the quarterback tight end offense out there. He'll line up a QB one snap, then go right over to tight end next snap.
Yeah, I know someone did ask about Frank, so we're definitely going to talk about that a little bit later. Yeah, TC asked about that, so we'll get to that one. But yeah, I mean, what the Falcons do in terms of salary cap, like, they're not going to be able to really pay wide receivers if they're paying Ridley. And I guess maybe, some people are like starting to question now if like they will pay Ridley, regardless of whether they decide to give him a long-term contract or not. He's here next year, so don't, worry about that. And they can always, the fifth, I think next year is his fifth year option. So, they can make a decision after next season if they wanted to. But they can't really afford to pay a wide receiver too. So they're going to either have to find someone or draft someone. And wide receiver 2 is almost certainly coming from the draft. And they're just sort of hoping the rest of the pieces they've accumulated can turn into like a functional wide receiver group. And like, I think they have some pieces. Like I like Zacchaeus, but as like a wide receiver 3 or 4. And then I like Tajay Sharp too, honestly, is like the same thing, sort of like a wide receiver 4. I think those are 2 like good depth guys, but they're not like they could be your number 1 and 2 wide receivers. Maybe like one of them could be like a secondary or third target if needed, but both of them, I mean, we're going to see a pretty, we're going to see, right? Because they're going to be the only 2 healthy wide receivers out there on Sunday that were like getting activated on a weekly basis. So we're definitely going to find out can Tajay Sharp and Olamide Zaccheaus actually be like a functional wide receiver duo? And I think we're all pretty skeptical of how that's going to go. So, to say the least. All right, let me get to some from Patreon here, from some that were sent in. So we have Tyler Russell sending us a question. He wants to know, he has a secondary question. So, what's our opinion on Fabian Moreau, and when are we going to see Richie Grant? Yeah, I mean, we talked about Grant a lot earlier, so kind of the same thing I'll just echo, which is that it's very likely that he will play a significant number of snaps on Sunday. But where he's playing them, probably more likely to be like a slot defender than safety, but we'll see. And then for Fabian Moreau, I'll open the floor to you guys. Dave, what do you think about Moreau's play so far?
I think it's been a mixed bag. I think, he is suffering somewhat in comparison because obviously nobody's really going after AJ Terrell when he's in there. I think that's a testament to how well Terrell is doing, but Moreau kind of gets picked on because he's the most obvious target and he's facing some good receivers. That said, I think it's, he's had a handful of good plays, and mostly I think it's just been, you sort of are getting a just below average, probably starting cornerback from him at this point. And I think he's young enough and talented enough that maybe we haven't seen his best football this year, which I think is the bright note that I would add here. But certainly it's been a mixed bag. And I think we're not unused to that being the case. Certainly since the days of peak Robert Alford, we have not had that quality number 2 opposite Desmond Trufant and now AJ Terrell. So, the thing for him is going to be he's going to have a couple of games in a row where he is really effective, so teams kind of stop trying to pick on him. And I guess this might be a good week for that because they're going to pick on whoever's starting in the slot. So, But I think I look at him as a guy that, if he sort of improves over the last, I can't even do the math anymore, but 2/3 of the season, I guess.
Yep.
Something like that. If he does improve over the last 2/3 of the season, I think the, Kyle Smith, who came over from Washington, was probably instrumental in getting him here. We'll want to bring him back because I think they like him, but I think it's going to depend entirely on where he goes from here.
Yeah. I mean, I think that Moreau has been disappointing so far. I mean, I was very high on him coming here. I thought he was going to be like one of the surprise sort of breakout players. And like there's still an opportunity for that to happen. A lot of the teams looked pretty, poor over the first few weeks of the season. They started looking better this week. But, I mean, no question he's got to play better as the corner 2. He's going to get targeted all the time because of what Dave said with AJ Terrell. So he needs to step up in that area. He still seems to me like he's not fully comfortable. And whatever that means, whether it's hasn't fully grasped the playbook or is just sort of still getting into this new defense. He just doesn't look confident right now. And we'll see, if that can change over the course of the season. I think it's possible. Adnan, you kind of in the same place with Moreau?
Oh, yeah. It's for the money that we paid him, it's not disgusting because he didn't really invest like a huge amount of money. I think he was he a vet min, but for the role that you're putting him in, and for you not addressing cornerback 2 at all outside of bringing in someone on the veteran minimum to play opposite of AJ Terrell, it hasn't been good. Even calling it a mixed bag with more negative than positive.
This time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, at this point, and like Dave said, I hope that he plays, better the rest of the way, and good enough to where they consider bringing him back. But right now, if the season ends, I can like leave Fabian Moreau easily. Like I wouldn't want him back.
I was really hoping that he would like crush it and then get like a monster contract, and we get like a 4th round comp pick for him next year. But that timeline is seeming less likely now. But maybe he plays poorly to start and then has a great finish, and he's still relatively cheap. We can get him on like another 1-year deal where he tries to sort of see if because he's still super young. I think he's like 27 or something. So it's not like he's a grizzled veteran at this point. But yeah, just he needs to be better, and he's going to get targeted a lot until he can prove that he's not vulnerable. And there have been some flashes. He needs to catch the damn pick, but you could say that for literally every person on the Falcons defense. You need to catch the damn ball. So it's not like it's just a him problem, but I think he has at least 2 dropped hits. So if he'd gotten even one of those ints, we might have a different sort of opinion on him, at least in part. But as it stands now, definitely needs to be a lot better there. All right, let's see. Next question. This one comes to us from Ollie on Patreon. So he asks, is it too early to start thinking about the draft and next season? I don't believe that it's too early to think about the draft if you enjoy the draft. If you don't enjoy the draft, no need to rush it. I mean, I certainly enjoy sort of just kind of thinking about it and following it, but I don't think we're like where we were last year where if we lose this game, I think we will be very close, if not there, to just kind of saying, okay, it's time to start focusing on 2022. I hope we're not there after Sunday, please God. But I think if you want to like follow draft stuff and do some mock drafts and keep up with the prospects and stuff like that, that's totally fine. I don't think it's too early. But what do you guys think? I know maybe you guys aren't as big of draft heads as I am, so.
If we lose this week, then it's draft season as far as I'm concerned. Like legitimately, yeah. I don't want to hear anything about any like possibility of like even competing like from the team, from anyone, just because you'll be 1-4. You'll be 1-4 and having lost to the Jets, the Eagles, and the Washington football team with Taylor Heineke at quarterback. So yeah, this is the lightest part of this team's schedule, like these first 5 games.
Yeah,
and it's only getting harder from here, and I don't care. The season literally stick a fork in them if they come out of this 1-4. I honestly will not want to hear anything from the coaching staff about like being competitive, because this team is not going to be competitive.
Yeah. Are you kind of in the same boat there, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like we have to grind through every week of the season regardless.
We do.
Like
yeah.
I'm very week to week until like we get very near to the end of the season. So, I love the draft. I get really excited for it every year, and then I curse the third day waiting through it. But I will definitely be ready to start thinking about where this team might go, because it's so important, especially after seeing the holes they continue to have. But like, yeah, if they lose, I'm not going to like jump in feet first, because we got, again, I have to do math, 12 games to go after that. And I can't mentally get there yet, but I don't blame anybody for thinking about something more exciting than what 12 weeks of Falcons football look like at 1-4 and having lost to the Jets.
Yeah, I don't blame anyone that's sort of future focused. Yeah, Ollie says I'm definitely worried about the rest of the season. Don't blame me, dude. It is concerning. But like, that's a good segue to talk about this, which is like, it's early and it's still to the point where like if you beat the Jets, especially if you beat them like convincingly, you're 2-3 going into your bye, and it's not anywhere near a disaster. You're like, okay, this was like just a little bit like, I think the optimistic among us were probably hoping we could get like 3-2 here. And I think they probably should be 2-2 going into this game. That you could argue either way, especially because maybe they should have lost the Giants game, but they're not like that far off from where they should be. So if they get this win, you're 2-3 going into the bye. It's not a disaster. It's okay. And then you're facing a Dolphins team, which has been very, very bad over the past couple games after the bye. So then it's like maybe we could get back to 500. So
and then after that, it's a couple division games, which
yep.
It doesn't matter what the record is. Those games always go either way.
They're going to be brutal.
Yeah, against Carolina in New Orleans, it doesn't help that we have Carolina right before New Orleans. But yeah, it's going to be either way. Like even if this team is 1-6 or 1-5 going into those games, they're still going to be grind fests.
Oh yeah, that's always how the division's going to be. But yeah, I mean, I think if you win this game against the Jets, especially if you look good doing it, that's a big part of this. You could feel like pretty good going into the bye. I mean, I think most of us are sort of predicting around 500. I'm still not moving off of my sort of 9-8 prediction. If they win against the Jets, I think 9-8 is very possible. If they lose against the Jets, we're probably starting to get to like a losing record at that point. Like, maybe 8-9 then would be my prediction. But you have to get this win against the Jets. You just have to. You can't just lose to the damn Jets, man. You can't. You got to find a way to win this. I know they're beat up on both sides of the ball. They're down to a very bare bones receiving core, and the Jets have a pretty good defense. I mean, they're like a top 12 defense, despite the fact that they have literally the worst offense in the league. But they have the worst offense in the league. They turn the ball over 16% of the time on offense. So like almost one in every 2 drives, they get a turnover, or one in every I guess it's like 1 in every 5 drives they get a turnover. So like you need to get some turnovers in this game and put this team away because you're not going to need 30 points to beat them. If you do, you have a big problem.
Zach Wilson's giving it away. Like he will give the ball away if you force it, and if you complete those turnovers, which they couldn't do against Washington. I think against the Patriots, he had more interceptions and completions, or the same amount, which is a brutal stat.
Yeah. I think the Falcons defense actually matches up well, and that they're going to be very blitz happy against him. They're going to really get in his face. The Jets have a very bad offensive line right now due to injury, and Zach Wilson is irresponsible with the football. So you'd think the Falcons' sort of aggressive scheme would be a good match for this. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. All right. Next question. This one's from Daryl Moore II. I think there are other guys with draft questions, so we can fold in some of these. But Daryl Moore asks, what do you guys think about the idea of, I knew we would get this soon, selecting defensive tackle Jordan Davis from UGA as a first-round pick next year? I like it. I do. It depends on where the pick happens. I think if it's like at pick 8 to like pick 15, I think that'd be great. But it just depends. It depends on a lot of factors. But I think in a vacuum, the Falcons coming out of next year's, like 2022's first round with Jordan Davis, yes, I think that's cool. I'm into that. What do you guys think about that?
I'm all for making UGA fans happy if we can. I think it would hopefully erase some 50 years of belly aching about not taking any dogs. So
yeah,
that's a plus in my book. And he just happens to be a terrific player. So,
2 birds, 1 stone, right?
Yeah, 2 birds with 1 stone. So I'll take that. But I'm generally on board. I'm sure we're going to have different questions on different prospects. Like, I'm on board with almost anything next year as long as you can show me, at the team, not you, whoever's asking, can show me that it's moving this team in the right direction. Like if they feel like putting somebody like Davis on this defensive line is really important, then let's do it. If they feel like, getting a future quarterback is important, let's do it. Heck, if you really think you need that top receiver because maybe you're not thinking Ridley's your long-term number 1 guy after, whatever happens in the coming weeks, then let's make it happen. So, at this point, I'm pretty gung-ho about anybody that's really good because this team just needs great players. So,
are you saying to draft good players, Dave?
I'm not. I would never suggest that.
Okay, good. That was a controversial take. Yeah.
Irresponsible. But no, I do think that Davis would be a really good pick potentially. We'll see where the Falcons end up and so forth. But I do like the thought of nobody asking me about UGA players for like 2 years, maybe.
Yep. Yeah. It would be nice to get, that sort of ball rolling on, having at least one highly drafted UGA player coming to Atlanta. But Adnan, what are your thoughts on Jordan Davis?
Yeah, I'm definitely all for building up the defensive line. We've missed a lot on the defensive line over the years. Grady Jarrett was a big hit, but then after that, he was a home run. But then after that, it's been pretty brutal. Vic Beasley had a good year, and that was about it. Tack McKinley was a complete bust. Marlon Davidson, the jury's still out on him, but the early returns haven't been very good. So, That's what happens when you keep missing and missing in the trenches, and we're seeing it with both the offensive line and with the defensive line. You have to do one of two things. You have to either pay a lot of money in free agency, which is what they did with Dante Fowler, um, and what they tried to do with guys like Carpenter, Jamon Brown, instead of Thomas Dimitroff allocating all of that money into one big, really good signing on the offensive line. He decided to galaxy brain it and try and bring in half-assed pieces, aiming for quantity over quality. And we saw how that turned out. Thomas Dimitroff isn't a general manager with the Falcons or anywhere in the NFL for a reason, because he was pretty terrible at it the second half of
Yeah.
his tenure in Atlanta, and should have been fired up along with Mike Smith. But the only reason why he stayed for as long as he did was solely because of Matt Ryan. Um, and the other method is you have to keep reinvesting. You have to keep reinvesting premium draft picks, and that's the point where the Falcons are at right now. Because, like I said, with Dimitrov, he completely hamstrung the cap. So option one is off the table. You don't have big money to spend on big star defensive linemen. You have to keep spending first rounders, and that's going to cost you at other positions as well. So,
Yeah.
it's going to be a really, really long time before this team is a complete football team. It's going to have holes for a long time, and it's going to take a lot of years of really savvy drafting, a lot of years of hitting on some day 3 picks as well, and
Mm-hmm.
some savvy veteran moves in free agency to be able to patch all of this up long term. But we're a very, very long way from that.
Yeah, and I mean, I love Jordan Davis. I think he is, that sort of rare nose tackle, right? Similar to a Vita Vea, to a Dontari Poe. That is like a true difference maker that can totally reshape your defensive line. Even though his individual stats, nose tackles, generally their individual stats aren't just eye popping. I mean, usually those elite nose tackles will get pretty good tackle for loss and overall tackle numbers, especially for a defensive tackle. But they don't necessarily produce a lot of sacks. But it's not, you have to think of the whole defense, not just the one player. If Jordan Davis requires 2 guys on him on every play because he's just a complete freak of nature in the best possible way. Grady Jarrett, like if you have to choose between doubling Grady and doubling Jordan Davis, one of those guys is not blockable. Both of those guys aren't blockable one-on-one. I mean, we've seen Grady Jarrett, even on a pretty terrible defensive line, he still makes plays every single game, 2 to 3 by himself. He just shoots in the backfield. He beats his man and gets there and makes a play. I think you unlock both Jarrett and the other guy when you get, a running mate for them. And I think that's why I would be very on board with the Jordan Davis pick, even though he's, a nose tackle who's not going to necessarily create these crazy stats on his own. They don't have a true nose tackle on the roster. I mean, I think Tyler Davison has been okay, and that's kind of who he is, and, we appreciate his contributions, but he's not really a 3-4 nose tackle in terms of his build. It's certainly not a pass rusher. Jordan Davis is like a completely different player, absolute mountain of a man, and incredible athlete. So it just totally reshapes the look of your defense on base downs and on any downs that you play him. So I'm a big fan of that. I know we have a couple more draft questions from Solaire. He's talking about if they do stay, about at the 5 spot where they are now, where would you guys go in the draft? So since I've been rambling, Adnan, I'll let you take a crack at it. Just assume all of the major names are there, that, other stuff happened. If you had your pick of like the litter at 5, who would you go with?
Man, if I say Malik Willis, everyone's going to call me a Matt Ryan.
That's what I did. I drafted Malik Willis at 6. That's where TDN has the Falcons picking.
Haters. You both haters.
It has nothing to do with Matt Ryan. I love that man. It has nothing to do with Matt Ryan. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd be so tempted to go quarterback at
you
number
can't
5.
pass on it twice, right? Like,
yeah, and that's life after Matt Ryan is going to come, and you really, really want to be ready for that life. I understand passing on, or I understand going with a generational tight end and, a unicorn in Kyle Pitts. Uh, Even though I would have gone quarterback this
This
past
was a
draft.
Justin Fields program. This was,
Yes.
full disclosure. Yeah.
But man, I feel like honestly, no matter which direction they go in, I won't be furious. Because you go with a guy like a Malik Willis, maybe even a guy like a Matt Corral from Ole Miss. Um, and it's not. It would be looking toward the future, bridging the gap past the Matt Ryan era. But if you go with defense, this is a really, really strong defensive draft. You know, you can't really fault them for that either, just because this defense has been very neglected for the past number of years. But either way, one way or the other, you're gonna have to spend a premium draft pick on a quarterback eventually, and that time period is coming a lot sooner rather than later. And I would much rather have Matt Ryan's replacement waiting in the wings already instead of having to possibly, trade up or rely on a free agent journeyman quarterback to take over for your franchise the way that the New Orleans Saints did. I don't think that the Saints are contenders by any means. I don't think that the Broncos, even though they have a fantastic defense, I don't think they're contenders either with Teddy Bridgewater. I think that those are just short-term stopgap solutions, and all of those teams that missed on quarterbacks over the years or had their big time quarterbacks retire in the past couple of years, they're also going to have to eventually pay that piper and spend large on a quarterback. And I would much rather be more proactive with it if I'm the Falcons and just get that guy in and just have him ready.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. That's why I did take Malik Willis in a mock draft I did this week at 6. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, that's way too early for Willis. I have no idea what's going to happen at quarterback in this class. Like, Malik Willis could be the clear quarterback 1. I doubt it because racism and other factors. But, I think you could make a non-racist case that Matt Corral has been the better quarterback 1. I'm not saying that, like, if you don't like Malik Willis as QB1, you're racist. Not saying that. But I guess I'm saying I find it hard to believe that Malik Willis will come away as quarterback 1 in this class. So he could go anywhere from like 2 to 15. Anywhere in that range would be plausible to me. So I just, that's why it's so volatile. Like, could you pass on, like, if you want Malik Willis, you have to take him where you're picking. I don't know that I would be trading up for a quarterback in this class. I don't think that this is the type of class where you'd make that sort of move. But I think if you're sitting somewhere and you love Malik Willis and he's there, you sort of just pull the trigger on that. But to be different, I will go in a different direction right now based on the mocks that I've been doing. I don't publish every single mock that I do, guys. I do a lot of mocks just for fun. But the one guy that I actually really like is actually Evan Neal at 5, if they're picking at that 5-6 spot, the offensive tackle, because I'm very down on Caleb McGarry's performance thus far. I'm hoping he'll turn it around here, but I think the Falcons in a couple years either way are going to have to decide if they want to pay McGarry or not. And if they pay McGarry, that means Jake Matthews days with this team are number 2, because they probably can't have both of these guys on huge contracts at this stage. Maybe after they do this whole cap cleanse, 2023, 2024 rolls around, they could pay, 2 of those offensive linemen premium money, but I don't know about you guys. I'd rather pay Chris Lindstrom premium money than somebody like Caleb McGarry. So Evan Neal is a great offensive tackle. I think he's actually looked better in his career at right tackle than left. He switched to left tackle this year, I believe, for Alabama. So he clearly is comfortable on the right side. I really like Evan Neal. I think, especially like if Kayvon Thibodeau is there at 6, then yes, it's Kayvon Thibodeau. But he's probably the favorite to be the number 1 player taken. So I don't think unless the Falcons are picking that high that they're really going to have a chance
don't roll
at
it
Thibodeau.
out.
I mean, I guess not. Another dark horse guy would be like Kyle Hamilton, the safety. really special player, just a really special player. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways you could go with it. Dave, is there any particular player you're hoping, assuming the Falcons have this, disastrous season and end up with a top 10 pick?
Definitely Thibodeau. If you can give me Thibodeau, I'll be happy.
Yeah, that's
If
the
you
clear-cut
can't,
number
I am
one if
not-
he's there, but probably not.
Yeah, probably not. I don't have any particularly strong preferences at this point. I'm certainly, especially at this point in the year, less educated on who's coming out next year. So, like I said, I will take any really good player at almost any position as long as you can guarantee he's going to work out. And of course, they have to say, when they're drafted, whether they'll work out or not. So hopefully,
yes, that's a rule. Yeah.
Get that guarantee. Yeah, it's important.
Yeah. I like that.
Ask me again in 5 weeks when the despair is set in, and I'll have a different answer. But yeah, unless you're happen to be at number one and you can get me Thibodeau, I think, just give me BPA, as D-Led would say.
Yeah, I like Dave. Dave is very much hashtag draft good players, and I usually agree with that. Just take good players. If they turn into plus starters for you, I don't care what position they're at. Maybe not a punter or a kicker in the top 10, but like pretty much anywhere else, if they turn into like a plus starter for you, that's better than 50% of first round picks already. So, maybe not get too cute with it, but yeah, I think, Malik Willis is my favorite. I love Malik Willis. I think he's a special guy. I do think he needs a year. Coming from Liberty's offense to the NFL, that's a big jump, you saw it when he played against an ACC team like Syracuse. The jump in competition was a little bit, shocking for him. He still had a good game, still did Malik Willis things, but it's going to take time for him to adjust to the NFL. And I think getting a year, that's why I think it is perfect for the Falcons to draft a quarterback. That's the same thing we talked about with Justin Fields. Same exact thing, just a year later. So if you didn't want Fields to possibly sit for a year or even 2 years, but you were open to drafting a quarterback now, then this year is just the same story, but they're probably sitting for 1 year. So I think if you like Malik Willis like I do, then I would say he's a franchise quarterback. You just take him, but it's certainly not going to help them much for 2022, which is going to disappoint a lot of people. But it really probably depends on your opinion of this team. If you think this team's like one great player away from being competitive, then you're probably leaning towards a Jordan Davis, a Kyle Hamilton, one of those top guys. If you're like, this team is, probably going to be like a wild card team in 2022, but, let's focus on the future still, then you're probably more like a quarterback team. So we'll see. We'll see. There's not really any wrong answers at this point in the season, too, because the stock of these guys is going to go up and down like crazy. So we'll obviously see how that shakes out as well. All right. Let me get to TC's question here. He wants to know what's going on with Feleipe Franks. Why are we doing this with Feleipe Franks? And TC, I don't know. I think Arthur Smith is just having a good time with Feleipe Franks. He's like, this dude's fun. I just want to use him. And I think if the team was winning, everyone would think that this was cute and fun and not a big deal. But because the team is bad, it's oh, why is he wasting his time, trying to make Feleipe Franks a tight end a thing? And that's a valid criticism, but just it kind of reminds me of that Always Sunny skit, with Charlie as the wild card in the crew, and you got to let the wild card do his thing, just let him do his thing. But yeah, I mean, do you guys have any strong takes on Feleipe Franks playing tight end and other?
Maybe Arthur Smith is just bored.
Yeah.
Maybe he's like, all right, let's try this out. If he is, then I suggest taking more time to watch game film and and
should be in there grinding that tape.
And to go over, game scenarios of, when to run, when not to run. Of course, he knows much more about that than I do, but, I sure as hell wouldn't have run twice and then thrown a screen pass on 2nd and 13 and then 3rd and 11 with no punter last game. But, maybe that's just me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Dave, do you have any particularly enticing Feleipe Franks takes?
Oh yeah, I love it. I love it so much. I want this to work out so badly, and I know that this makes me the huge heel of
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Falcons fandom right now. Yeah, because nobody wants it to waste time with this. Like everybody's over it already. It's like the character you introduce like 6 seasons into a show when you're running out of ideas, and people are like, "Oh God, I hate this guy." That's Feleipe Franks right now. But
Are you
I
calling
think that
Feleipe Franks Poochie from The Simpsons?
I he's going back to his home planet.
Yep.
But yeah, we could nickname him that. He's not going to like it, but
No.
that's
I'm
our
I'm not
power out here, I
I'm
guess.
kind of all for that.
Yeah. But I'm all for it because you take a guy and they clearly like him. They like him a lot. And he's huge. He runs really fast. He's got a cannon arm. He's an interesting guy. And a lot of teams would take a look at that for a little bit and be like, we can't make these pieces fit. But the Falcons are already, thinking long term, and they're like, well, what if we had our own Taysom Hill, like except less annoying, hopefully. And I don't think it's probably real likely to work out, but like I love the idea of it. I love the idea of having someone who can add that kind of unpredictability into the game plan, even if it's only a handful of snaps. And so, while it's frustrating right now to see him active when he's getting 3 snaps, and you've got a guy like Tuati Mariner who didn't play last week, and it probably would have been good had he played rather than Franks. I do think on the off chance it pays off and this ends up being incredible, I'm all in on it. Like we stopped having fun a couple of years ago as Falcons fans, and like we're not having a lot of fun right now. So like let Feleipe Franks be fun. Let him be our fun guy.
Yeah,
I
Our
exactly.
special fun guy.
I literally haven't had fun since the Super Bowl.
Honestly, I rewatched the first 3 quarters of Sunday's game yesterday.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say you rewatched the first
No,
3 quarters of the
no,
Super Bowl.
no. I would never do that. I would never watch that game ever. No, I'm talking about like the Washington game. And honestly, that was the first time I felt like I actually want to rewatch this. This team was fun for those 3 quarters. That offense was good. We saw Cordarrelle Patterson moss a guy in the end zone. Like, what is going on with this man? How is Cordarrelle Patterson so damn good? Like, I can't understand it. Like, is this just complete randomness, or is this like actually so? This isn't somebody else's question. This is my question. Like, what do you guys think about
I mean, that's fine, but can this team please be fun while winning?
That would also be. That's the next step. That's the next step, Adnan. So yeah.
Yeah, no, Cordarrelle Patterson, he was a first round pick. Like, he isn't someone that just completely came out of nowhere as an undrafted guy. He wasn't a first round pick just because of his kick return prowess. He's become an all time player when it comes to special teams. He's a 4-time All Pro kick returner, or kick returner. He doesn't return punts. He was a first rounder because coaches believed that they could unlock this potential, and nobody has been able to thus far. Josh McDaniels couldn't in New England. Matt Nagy couldn't in Chicago. I forget who the Vikings offensive coordinator was back during the days of like 2013, 2014. But he couldn't do it, and now Arthur Smith, he's found something.
He's doing it.
He is unlocking Cordarrelle Patterson without a doubt, and Patterson is on pace to shatter every single career mark when it comes to rushing yards, rushing attempts, receiving yards, receiving attempts, touchdowns, you name it. And it's working. And Arthur Smith is it's clear as day to me right now why even while they were cash strapped, and it was a question about how they were going to pay the draft class, they still paid Cordarrelle Patterson $3 million at that time. This was pre-Julio Jones trade, all of that. We didn't know where the cap was coming from. But I have no doubt in my mind that Arthur Smith called up Fontenot and said, go get this guy. I'm going to figure this out. I have the plan for him.
Yeah. And Evan brought this up, but Patterson did achieve a feat that Julio Jones never did in Atlanta, which was to get 3 touchdowns in a single game.
I mean, Julio Jones doesn't score touchdowns.
Yeah, that's just his thing. No, I'm just joking. I thought that was really funny though. But already, in just 4 games, Cordarrelle Patterson is 2 touchdowns away from getting his career high in touchdowns. He's tied for the most receiving touchdowns in his career already. He already has, after 4 games, he's already surpassed 3 of his previous, seasons as a receiver, where he played 16 games, all of those seasons, by the way. And as a rusher, he is already to his, I think, 5th best mark after 4 games. And again, played 16 seasons otherwise. Like, to be his best running season ever, he has to get 232 yards total. He's already got 120. Like, I mean, it's just like he's clearly going to have his best ever season in the NFL, and I'm happy for him. He's just such a fun player to watch. And like, you can critique a lot that Arthur Smith does, but I think the fact that he has made this player who was this, thought to be this great talent into an offensive weapon when no one else ever has been able to do that, including, some good coaches, as Adnan mentioned. So, I think Arthur Smith does deserve some props for how he's using Patterson. I think maybe that's a positive sign that this guy does really know what he's doing, even though the results overall still haven't come. He's showing, some of those nice things that you would want from a really good offensive coach. So that's my positive spin on the Patterson thing. I'm a big fan of what's going on there.
And that's why Franks is going to work out. Because he just finds ways to unlock guys. Now, ignore Mike Davis, ignore Kyle Pitts, ignore Kevin Ridley.
Yeah, I think the Kyle Pitts thing is sort of overshadowing now. Yeah. Honestly, though, we should talk about Kyle Pitts a little bit before we get out of here. But, yeah, I mean, I do like Feleipe Franks. I was on record as predicting that he would be the QB2 for this team coming out of training camp, into the regular season. And technically, I think this is a W for me because, look, Patterson's played way more snaps than Josh Rosen. So technically that makes Feleipe Franks has played more snaps than Josh Rosen. So, hey, you know what that means. I was right. Feleipe Franks is the quarterback too. So, big W for me there. But no, I think if you get anything out of Franks as an undrafted quarterback, if he just turns into your long-term QB2, you don't even have to do any Taysom Hill stuff. Just being like a reliable long-term backup for the Falcons and their eventual future quarterback, that's a great return on an undrafted quarterback. That's awesome. So, like, he doesn't even have to be this great player for them to really get a nice W there early on. So, but that's what you do with these traitsy guys. Like, I mean, honestly, Feleipe Franks' tape this last season was better than any Josh Allen tape that I had ever seen. Like, Josh Allen's college tape was bad. So, like, you can turn these toolsy guys into starters. It just doesn't happen very often. But I would much rather take the gamble on an undrafted free agent like Feleipe Franks than Josh Allen, where you had to spend a first-round pick. Because if something goes wrong with Feleipe Franks, it doesn't matter. All you did was sign him to an undrafted contract. So, I'm all for taking
guys,
those swings.
I need to head out real quick. I will.
Okay, no problem.
I'll see you guys at the post game on Sunday.
Absolutely. Thank you, Adnan, for coming in.
Take it easy.
Yeah, we are to an hour here. So Adnan, fulfilled his obligation. So we'll have to write that down. But yes, thank you very much, Adnan. I think Dave just left by mistake. Yeah, did you just leave? Dave? I thought Dave was gonna just try to slip out. Yeah, at the same time. Like, also, I'm leaving. No, we are gonna wrap up here in just a second, guys. I'll scan to see if we have any final things. But yeah, thanks to everyone for questions. We had a lot of questions tonight. I know this is like one of the first times we've actually had like too many questions that we couldn't just answer like every single question, which I think is a good sign. For us and for you guys too. I know like some of you guys just try to like load us up with like as many as possible, so we don't have to like have dead air here. So thank you for that. But yeah, it's before we go, let's talk about Kyle Pitts real quick, because this is the game, Dave. Right? This is when we finally see the Kyle Pitts breakout.
No, it could be. And here's the thing: like with Pitts, he is everything that people say about him. Like that, I read that Lee Smith quote. I'm not sure if everybody saw that. Just talking about the kind of man he is, the kind of player he is. and how special he is. And like all of that is evident. You see him, he's going to be fantastic. And it's going to be sooner than later. I really believe that. But I think when you take Ridley out of the equation, like the Jets defense has basically, until somebody else steps up, they have two guys to defend, and it is Cordarrelle Patterson and it's Kyle Pitts. And so I don't expect this to be a Pitts breakout per se, unless, Arthur Smith can dig into his bag of tricks and, find ways to get Pitts some favorable matchups and get other guys involved, so some of that pressure's off of him, because there's no way the Jets are going to let Pitts beat them out of the gate. So this may not be his breakout effort, and I think maybe the unfortunate thing about that is people are going to look at that and say, well, the Falcons aren't committed to using him, or maybe Pitts isn't quite as good as we thought he'd be right out of the gate. I don't think either of those things are true. I think certainly I have worried a little bit about his usage and wondered a little bit out loud about it to this point. But because Ridley is out, because Gage continues to be out, I don't think this is like a peak situation for Pitts to really pop off. So
yeah,
if he does anyways, in spite of all of that working against him, then it will be awesome. And certainly he could do it, but I wouldn't hang your fantasy hopes or anything like that on Kyle Pitts this week necessarily.
Yeah. I mean, I would still start him a lot in fantasy.
For sure.
If you drafted,
I wouldn't sit him or anything.
If you drafted him, you probably don't have any tight ends that are better, because as always, tight end is a wasteland outside of the top guys. So I would certainly not bench him this week if he's your best option. Unless you picked up Dawson Knox or something off the waiver wire, which I did. But, toot my own horn there with the fantasy takes. We'll save that for the fantasy pod. But yeah, I think Kyle Pitts will get the most targets that he's ever gotten against the Jets. Whether that turns into a 100+ yard game with touchdowns or whatever, that I don't know. But I do think he will be the focal point of the passing attack for the first time in his career. And I don't know how well that's going to go. I think it'll probably go okay. But it's going to be tough for him because the Jets, honestly, not a bad defense. Jets, pretty good defense. They've covered tight ends well. They've covered receivers well. Where they've been a little less good is against the run. So if the Falcons can get up early and just ground pound, that's probably the best way to sort of put this Jets team away. But I don't know anything with this Falcons team. I hope Kyle Pitts has a great game. That'll be my summary. But man, they really need to get this win against the Jets. Solaire has a question that's more of a comment before we go. He says, which division is the worst in terms of ownership, and why is it the NFC East? And I think that one is just, correct. So we don't need to really, dive into that at all. I think it's just pretty clear there. So thank you for that contribution, Solaire. But anything else you want to say tonight, Dave, before we wrap up?
No, I would just say, it's been a tough season. It's been several tough seasons. Appreciate you guys being along for the ride. Obviously, it's not necessarily going to get easier soon. We know that this might be a tough game, but I would say I am at least somewhat optimistic about the way that Arthur Smith is talking about building this team, the importance of growth and development, and I really hope that all of us get to see, the rookies all contributing this week, because I think we might see Darren Hall and Richie Grant for the first time. Certainly it'd be great if Pitts did break out. So hopefully everybody wakes up and gets to watch the Falcons win Sunday, I would say.
Yes, that would be a nice start to a Sunday instead of a depressing one where we have to go through the rest of the slate watching highlights of the Jets beating the Falcons and, the Falcons taking on the mantle of... I don't think they're going to take on the mantle of the worst team from the Texans. I think the Texans kind of have that one staked out pretty much. But, the second worst team definitely would be in contention if they lose to the Jets. So let's just avoid that whole nightmarish scenario with a win on Sunday, which, as Dave mentioned, we will be doing a post-game show after, which will probably be around noon or 12:30 or something like that, I would guess, based on the timing. So stay tuned for that one. For all of our patrons, again, thank you so much for your questions, for your support, both financially and otherwise. A lot of you guys are some of our top commenters, top interactors. Just you guys help keep the conversation going. on Discord, on here, everywhere. We just really appreciate you guys for that, for everything. It just really means a lot to us. So thank you guys so much. If you're interested in getting in on this patron action, if you're watching this show after we record, very easy. Patreon.com/Falcoholic Live is the link. So you can sign up there. We have, just a few tiers. It's not very complicated. And, there's a lot of options. So you guys can mix and match. But we just appreciate anyone who's willing to do that. And also for you guys, patrons, let us know what kind of content you guys are looking for in terms of patron stuff. We certainly have some ideas, stuff that we're trying to work on. But if you have specific things that you'd like to see that aren't too daunting in terms of what you'd be asking, we're happy to hear that. Feel free to message us on Patreon with those suggestions, and we will try to work those in and get cracking on some of that cool stuff, particularly for the off season when there's less going on. So again, for myself, Kevin Knight at Falcoholic. Kevin, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Dave is at the Falcoholic or at Words and Beer for other great takes. Dave, anything else you'd like to plug while you're here?
No, just stay tuned for our award-winning coverage. Don't ask what awards they were, but we'll give you a great live show on Sunday, and hopefully the bye week will be a quiet one for everybody. So thanks for tuning in.
Yes, a quiet, positive bye week of contemplation is always the best bye week. So we're just going to hope for that. We're going to hope beyond hope that the Falcons can get this W and get things in a little bit less of a depressing situation. Because I'm not looking forward to 2 weeks of negativity coming off a loss to the Jets. That would be very bad. So let's not do that. I think we're all in agreement there. Again, guys, we'll see you on Sunday. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great end to your Friday night, and we will see you this weekend. Have a good one, folks.